Everyone seems to care. Out of my head, I'll get there. Seems so through, I'll get out.
What's the use in trying to make somebody change if they'd like to stay the same? You feel the weight on your shoulders. It's so tiring fighting getting older. Nothing left to do. May will turn to June. You can all make him stay. Nothing to do about the rain. Just that the seasons change. So there might just come a day you wake to the sun in your face, and you will not feel this way. You can all make him stay. Nothing to do about the rain. Just that the seasons change. So there might just come a day you wake to the sun in your face, and you will not feel this way. What's the use in hope?